Association. Lake Association does a lot of work to kind of spearhead many initiatives with the lake, but one of the biggest ones that you probably see is the treatment plans, working with especially the town to make sure that we have enough funding to do those treatments every other year or so. So on that note, I'll pass it over to Sam to kind of discuss what the plan is for next year.
Thanks, Fritz. I think what I mostly want to do is kind of open up to questions a little bit, but our plan this year in conjunction with the town and the village is to treat next year. And we're basing that on looking at the treatments that we've done over the past years and realizing that if we're going to control milfoil with Renovate, which is what we're using now, we're going to probably have to go to an every other year treatment. We tried at one point to maybe think about going to every third year, but as Bob Johnson pointed out, the density goes up to a level where people are pretty unhappy with the lake when it goes up to that level. And even at the end of this year, the density was getting to the point where, especially up at the north end of the lake, it was pretty impassable and all the way up to the surface. We need to treat next year probably about another $125,000. And right now, the level that we're at now, we've raised about 125 now. I guess the important thing also is Jimmy brought up that the town every year does contribute to overall lake management. I think that was 135,000. I think what people need to realize also is that not much of that actually goes to Renovate. Probably about $30,000 of that actually goes to Renovate. And the rest of it is for other portions of lake management, the harvester and things like that. So it's difficult, and what we don't know for the future is how sustainable is it for Cazenovia Lake to have an every other year treatment plan, with the Cazenovia Lake Association being the primary vehicle for fundraising for it. It's going to be a very difficult process, and whether or not we're going to raise enough money for the treatment next summer is still up in the air. There is another chemical coming down the pike that is similar to Renovate. It looks like it's just as specific as Renovate. It is not approved by the DEC yet, but what it looks like, it's going to be able to possibly allow us to go to every third year treatment if the data continues to look as good as it looks on that. But I kind of want to open it up just a little bit and allow people to just kind of ask questions in a general way. Anybody? Yeah.
Funding is an issue, and it seems like the watershed pays a disproportionate amount of the taxes. Is there any way we can consider that there would be a broad-based tax, albeit maybe low impact on people who don't live on the lake, but everyone pays their share so that we can sustain it that way?
It's been talked about, it's been looked into. We've actually had lawyers look at that a little bit. It is an extremely difficult process. It's kind of along the lines of doing a sewer district kind of thing. And you would have to get Bob, tell me if I'm wrong, you'd have to get 51% of people to agree to doing that district. Go ahead.
The other disadvantage of doing it as a tax is that with the current tax plan, you wouldn't be able to deduct, given the cap on state and local taxes.
Right. Whereas
donations to the Lake Association are fully tax deductible.
Tax deductible.
It's much more efficient to do it.
And of course, as with other fundraising things, if we could get everybody to contribute a little bit, it would really not be that much to treat the lake. But as of right now, it's really a small portion of people that contribute.
Sam, I'm curious in terms of, you may know this number, or maybe the Watershed Association has it, but I don't know if the public really understands the total cost of lake management. And we see, this is what the village is doing here, and this is what the boat launch is, and we got this much for renovating. I would love to see a chart that shows everything that it takes in terms of managing the lake.
Sure.
And how we compare to similarly sized, other similarly sized villages and towns. So, you know, you mentioned the amount of money on renovate. Well, is that just the town's portion? Is that just, what does the Lake Association contribute to the renovate? What does the village? You know, and I just think it's too dispersed, and we need one lake management budget that everyone
Sure.
understands.
Sure.
And is that something that the Watershed Association might be able to take on? Because it has the Lake Association and the village and the town and the,
Maybe do an itemization
Yeah.
of where all that money is going.
yeah.
As of right now, the vast majority of the renovate treatment is just through fundraising. A little bit of it is tax dollars, but still the vast majority is fundraising. But since I'm going to be the president of the Watershed Council next year, I can certainly address that, yeah.
At the top level, though, it's basically the town puts $135,000 a year into lake management, essentially the environmental line. The village, the boat launch pays for itself by the fees, so you can kind of take that off the table.
No, but I think that has to go in above the line and then below the line.
Yeah, but
Because
it
that
zeroes
number,
out.
you know, 111 hours was just for the cutting, but what's the other cost of the other stuff? And if those people are being deployed for other village things, then that's inflating that cost. So I just think it's fuzzy, it's real fuzzy.
Kind of fuzzy,
Yeah.
loosey-goosey, yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
boat patrol,
Yeah, that too.
that's a village cost?
It's kind of an in-kind
Marine
thing.
Patrol?
Instead of exchanging checks between the Lake Association and the village, we do it's basically our donation to the Lake Association from the
But
village.
it's part of the management cost again,
If you
Total
want to
cost of
include it that
ownership,
way.
in essence.
I guess the other important thing that we always try to bring up as the Lake Association is that we do try to work in conjunction with the village and the town with all of this, okay? And try not to make this controversial between the various entities. The other thing is we're not locked into renovate, which is this chemical treatment. I don't think any of us here love the fact that we're using this chemical in the lake to control the milfoil. But right now, it looks like it's safe. From everything that we can gather, it appears to be very safe. Bob has pointed out that how specific it is, that it really does control the milfoil without killing other species that are in the lake. And I think that's a very important factor for whatever we use in the lake. The balance between harvesting and chemical treatment, I think, is still something that we need to constantly be looking at, like you pointed out. You had a question?
Yeah, I just was wondering how many people should be donating to the Lake Association if it was 100%?
Everybody.
Right,
Everybody.
but how many is that, and what percentage seems?
How many, you probably have a handle on that better than I do.
The total contributors, probably numbers in the 300 area.
It's about 250 contributors in the last cycle. This cycle, we're under 200 contributors so far.
Is that for the renovate or the supporting the Lake Association or both?
Totally right. So basically, the Lake Association fundraising we do, 99.9% of the money goes towards funding for renovate. The only other money that we spend is for advertising, the summit and promotion. All the money we raise for renovate, that's it.
And that hasn't always been the cost, or, what we used it for. It's just, right now, CLA has been focused on the renovate and using the money all towards that. In past years, when I first moved here, that was really harvesting things going on primarily.
But in terms of how many should be donating, I mean, are there 3,000?
Well, let's look at just lake owners. What percentage of lake owners donate?
The there's 250 people on the considered donors. So far, about 70 have donated. Of the 70, they've provided about $70,000 of the 100,000 that we've raised so far in the last 4 months.
So a lot more, just lake owners should be doing
There's
it.
about 3,000 town people that we've sent letters to, and there's been about $35,000 of donations from that. So to answer your question, if we can get, of those 2,000 people, if we could get half of those people giving $50, it makes a huge difference. So it really is just that we need more people donating, in smaller numbers, it really helps immensely.
So if anybody has a fundraising guru, we need you.
Sam, what about local businesses? I remember one little study that a CAD student did here, talking to people at the restaurants, gas station, and asked why they were here, and the lake was sort of on the top of the list, so bring
And
that back up.
this year, we've actually focused on that. There's been a recent spearhead to actually go out and individually contact businesses, because in the past, it's been pretty sparse, their donations to us.
I just wonder how they're doing this year, the businesses.
In terms of donating,
Yeah,
it's better, but it could be a lot better.
the way to recognize them, I noticed you recognize the people.
I think we are going to. I think one of the things that we, after we've had a chance to contact all the businesses, we'll probably publish who's donated. Yeah.
Sam, of all the lakes in Madison County, only one other lake, Lake Moraine, has a taxing district that they formed. And they started out at $50 per person or residents around the lake. And they actually moved it up, and people voted to increase it to, they're over $112 now or so. So that's collecting money from everyone, and so that's an option.
I mean, I keep thinking that ultimately something like a tax district is going to be the way to go. But we've just been informed by so many different sources what a difficult path that is to get that accomplished. Yeah.
But the alternative is if you have diminished property values because of the poor water quality,
Right.
then everyone's going to be
Then
hit with it.
everyone's
And
gonna
that's the
suffer.
education. That's where it's got to come through. That
Last year, I don't know how many people were here, but we did try to grapple a little bit with how much that lake provides our community in terms of just overall quality of life and even economic benefit. And while it wasn't a perfect study, it did show how valuable that lake is, and having it be useful to everybody is. I think.
How many acres you doing this year? I mean, you're thinking of doing?
It's going to be based on Bob Johnson's study, okay? And it'll be pretty darn similar to probably when we treated in 2017, okay? Do you recall that map? And it's based on density.
And what is it, about a tenth of the lake?
Do you remember how many acres, Bob,
190.
the last treatment?
190.
190.
Is it about a fifth of the lake? 1,000? Is there anything, if you could treat the whole lake, whether it would make a difference or not?
Well, and that's an interesting question, because we have based, the treatments that we're doing now have been based on the fact that when going way back to when we first used Renovate, we treated like all the north end, and then the following year, all the south end. And then the idea was to try to just spot treat to control areas. And the spot treatment didn't work very well. And it's probably because you get a disbursement of the concentration of the Renovate. So it does appear that you do need to treat significant areas in order to not disperse the density. But all of that continues to be looked at, yeah.
Sam, if I could add one thing.
Sure.
The amount that we can treat is really unusual for the policy. Besides studies on how much we can raise.
Did you get that? So ultimately, whether or not we treat 190 acres, it's going to be determined by how much we're able to raise, yeah, money.
And the most you could treat is about 400 for the right water depth and everything. And you don't need to treat the middle.
Thank you. We'll move on.